Hi guys,
Assalamu alaikum.
I'm Suki.
I'm Zara.
How are you guys? What are you doing these days? And today we are going to react to
Why is Singapore so rich? Yeah.
This is a highly requested video because a lot of people told us react also to Singapore, please.
Yeah.
And we never did it. So here
Now today
we are starting with this video.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Singapore is a tiny country, so tiny you can drive across the island in just an hour. Despite its size and lack of natural resources, Singapore's 5.6 million people enjoy one of the highest average incomes in the world, ahead of countries like Germany, France, and Japan.
I didn't know this. Actually,
Yeah.
this is a country that I never heard about.
Like,
me personally,
we know Singapore.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
the existence of Singapore.
Yeah.
But I never.
You don't know anything about Singapore.
Yeah, and I never searched anything about Singapore.
Yeah, because in school we don't study about Singapore
or
so
Asia in general.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that Singapore is this rich compared also to Germany, France, and Japan.
So, how did this little island get so rich?
Yeah.
It is an island, so
Yeah, I think so.
Singapore doesn't have resources like coal or oil, but it does have something countries can't buy: location. The island sits in the middle of an important trade route, connecting Asia to Europe. That's a key reason why the British decided.
Okay, so Singapore is between Asia and Europe.
Yeah, it doesn't have resources like oil, etc.
But has a
she
good
said, but she has a good position. Yeah.
Back in 1819 to set up
because here there's the Mediterranean Sea, Arabia Sea, Bay of Bengal, and South Chinese Sea. Yeah,
Okay.
that's why.
And here she said that
British colonized
Singapore.
Yeah, in 1819
in Singapore. Location isn't everything, though. There are several countries nearby that could have made use of their whereabouts, but they weren't quite.
So Singapore is next to Malaysia and Thailand.
Yeah.
As successful. That's because there are other ingredients that go into this crazy rich Singapore recipe.
She said that even if Singapore is next to Malaysia and Thailand, and they are basically in between Asia and Europe, she said that Thailand and Malaysia they didn't become this rich like Singapore.
Yeah,
I hope she explains better.
I think yes, because Singapore is literally in the middle.
Yes, but she said that Malaysia and Thailand, they are basically them two in the middle, but they didn't become this rich like Singapore. I want to know why.
I'm at the Raffles Hotel, which is one of the most prominent icons of Singapore's colonial history. Unlike some of its neighbors, which wanted to separate themselves from their colonial histories, Singapore kept close ties with Britain, even after independence in 1960.
Oh, yes. So, like we saw Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Philippines, they wanted their independence from their
colonizers.
Yes. Singapore, she kept close to Britain.
Yeah.
That decision announced to the rest of the world that Singapore was open for business. That's important because
now I understand.
We know now that exports help to grow and expand an economy. But back then, it wasn't conventional wisdom. Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South Korea became known as the four Asian tigers, which have grown rapidly since the 1960s. Their rise was fueled by exports, industrialization, and more crucially, big doses of government intervention. This was especially true for Singapore. Labor strikes were common on the island in the 1960s, even with high unemployment. On top of that, there was a housing crisis, with Singapore being home to one of the largest slum settlements in the world. So how do you build a more disciplined labor force to attract investment? Well, you give them something to work for, like a house of their own, which is why one of the first Singapore government agencies set up was focused on building affordable public housing. While just 9%.
So basically, they choose Singapore. We saw that Singapore doesn't have oil or anything like that, but they choose Singapore like a house because it is between Europe and Asia, and they can rest basically in Singapore in between.
Yeah, but also because
It is
even though they took their independence, they showed to Europe, like to British, that they are still still their friends. So they never British never saw them like enemies. They didn't broke this alliance. So they
Yes, but the point is that the position of this is what she said in the beginning. The position of the Singapore, is a strategical position for Britain.
Yeah, but also they said that British is like British always
Yeah, so
yeah, Singapore like their home, their second
Yes.
home in Asia.
yes.
Percent of the population lived in public housing in the 1960s, that figure stands at more than 80% today. Adding greater employer rights, and strikes became extremely rare. At the same time, the government attracted foreign investment through tax incentives, growing the economy and easing unemployment, which fell from an estimated 14% in 1959 to 4.5% in the 1970s. By the 1980s, Singapore was a regional manufacturing hub, and it was the world's biggest producer of hard disk drives. But today, manufacturing makes up only about 20% of Singapore's GDP. Take a look at Singapore's growth in GDP. You can see two big surges. One
A really fast growth.
Yeah.
beginning in the late 80s and another at the start of the new millennium. Ironically, Singapore has a downturn to thank for that. You see, in 1985, Singapore went into its first post-independence recession, prompting the government to introduce new measures. State-owned companies like telecommunications were privatized to make them more competitive. Then, at the turn of the century, service industries like finance and insurance were further liberalized. That openness helped to grow the share of services from just 24% of GDP in 1985 to more than 70% in 2017.
Wow.
Multinational companies began to set up regional headquarters in Singapore. That attracted even bigger players, boosting Singapore's attractiveness to corporates and in turn its GDP. Now,
They worked really smart.
Yeah.
Singapore is ranked as one of the world's easiest places.
New Zealand and the second it is in the
second
second
position.
place, and then
Wow.
South Korea in the fifth place.
Yeah, but I think also European people they want to do business in Singapore because in Europe you have to pay a lot of taxes.
Taxes. Taxes.
Instead, in Asia, like Singapore, they don't have to pay that much of
Taxes.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
To do business. Singapore has been praised for transforming itself from a developing to developed economy. But do most Singaporeans feel rich? Well, not exactly. Two of the most important
This is an important point because the country might be rich, but the people that live in the country, they may suffer because the country is rich, but we have to see people living there.
reasons: the high cost of living and inequality. For 5 years in a row, Singapore has been named the world's most expensive city, ahead of New York and London.
Really? That's mind blowing. I didn't know.
That's largely because of taxes on cars, making Singapore the most expensive place in the world to buy and run an automobile. It's also the third most expensive place on earth to buy clothes.
Oh, really? Fourth in the world?
Maybe because yes, they are the richest country, one of the most richest country in the world.
But the taxes, they are
high.
these really high.
Yeah, because I think they have to import a lot of products because they don't have a lot of resources. So,
Okay.
like, yes, this is the
so
problem.
the problem is that the people suffer from
Yeah.
this because they if the clothes are this expensive, how can they buy the clothes? Like
Yeah.
only rich people can buy them.
Yeah.
But personal care, household goods, and domestic help in Singapore tend to be less expensive than in other
Fortunately,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear this because how they can eat if it is that much expensive.
major cities. While Singapore is rich in terms of GDP per capita, the median monthly salary is $3,270.
That's good.
Yeah, but depends how much taxes are
Of the
in
living.
the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The living expensive. So, yeah.
That doesn't sound too bad, but about 20% of that goes into a mandatory savings account. You can use the account to pay for medical bills, housing, and education, but it does restrict the purchasing power of the population. You've probably heard of the movie Crazy Rich Asians, which was set here in Singapore. And it's no wonder, because Singapore has about 184,000 millionaires, making it truly the land of the crazy rich. That's great news. But Singapore also has a fairly high rate of inequality compared with other developed countries.
This is not good.
Yeah.
This is the bad side of a country.
Yeah.
And I think this is a side that a lot of rich countries has.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Gini coefficient, which is a scale used to calculate inequality, with 0 being the most equal and 1 being the least. Singapore's Gini coefficient, after accounting for taxes and transfers, was 0.356 in 2017. That was worse than countries like the United Kingdom, Japan, Korea, and Germany, although it fared better than some, like the United States. Is that number really that bad? That question had books like this flying off the shelves. A think tank ignited public debate on the divide in social classes after it found that on average, Singaporeans who live in public housing have fewer than one friend who lives in private housing. The government has called the issue of inequality a national priority.
Yes, it should be.
Yeah.
But it remains to be seen if it is a problem that can be tackled effectively.
Wow, it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Look at the scenery.
Yeah.
Wow.
We studied in marketing
Yeah.
at university that Singapore has the first country that has the autobus without the driver. It's automatic.
Yeah, you are right.
Yeah.
I forget it.
Yeah.
You are right. This is really, I don't know how to describe it. This is really new for us because this is a new country. We are discovering a new country, and I don't really know anything about Singapore.
Yeah.
And knowing that it is the richest, one of the richest country of the world world is really impressive. And it looks beautiful from the scenery that we saw.
I think the only thing I knew about the Singapore is that it's a developed country that has a lot of electronic things.
So you knew it?
Yeah, just this thing, but I don't know about the nation, how they live there. So if
the culture,
the culture extra. So if you want us to react to how to live there or any other information, please
comment down below.
Yeah, and suggest other videos that we will show as Singapore. And yes, thank you.
Thank you for watching this video, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.